Friends, good morning. Good morning and welcome in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. It's good to have you here. Thanks for joining us today. I'm looking for somebody who could advance the slides in our PowerPoint this morning. If there's a volunteer, that would be great. I've got everything up and going, so I just need someone who will do that. Thank you. Otherwise, welcome to our worship service today. Wanted to remind you that today is the day of our annual meeting. And so we will have an abbreviated worship service and then move right into the meeting so that we hope that you'll be able to finish the morning, probably 12:30, maybe 12:45, but not later than that. So thank you for coming. If you didn't already see the copies of the annual report, they are at the back of the church. And coffee hour today will be at the back of the church too. So the tea was ready a little earlier. I'm drinking some. The coffee has just arrived. If you would like to go and get some for yourself, please do that. Feel free to bring it back into the pews. But we need to make that transition now. We need to remind ourselves why we came and what it is that we're here to celebrate today and the ministry that God does through us rather than just the things that we get as we come. So take a moment while we light the candles to prepare yourself for worship, to think about the ministry of this place and the ways that it touches your lives and the ways that through you God touches other lives. We'll light the candles and we'll prepare ourselves for worship. For the call to worship this morning, I wanted to pick up lines, not from the psalm for the day, but rather from the opening hymn that we're going to sing this morning, because I think it captures a sense of why we're here and what we're trying to do in this place. The hymn writer says, "Let us build a house where love can dwell and all can safely live. Let us build a house where saints and children tell how hearts learn to forgive." And it goes on, and it talks about the kind of community that we try to be. So friends, come, let us worship, and let us sing that whole hymn together and reflect on the ways as we do that in which Forest Hill tries to be that kind of community. Let's sing. and let us pray together. Help us to be that kind of house, O God. Help us to be the kind of house where love dwells and everyone is safe, where healing and strength are offered and received, where each are named and their uniqueness celebrated, where tears mingle with laughter and we all learn how to forgive. As we talk through the business of our life together, remind us again that we don't gather for business, and that all the programs and dinners and trips and apple pies are just tools we use to build that kind of house, so that we might become that place where all are welcome, and where your grace enlivens our living and blesses not only us, but everyone who comes in contact with us. And so let us bring our confession before God in silence. Friends, you are named, you are safe, you are welcome. Thanks be to God. Amen. So one of the things that we always do at our annual meeting Sunday is remember members who have passed away. And this year we only had one, which is always a nice sign, but a pretty significant one. George Stephen was a member of our church for years and years and years, long before I came. He was member of the board, he was clerk of session, he was a member of our trustees. He used to stand up here and do the announcements every Sunday and during the worship service so that I didn't have to. And he would run through all of the announcements and I would sit there and nod wisely. And at the end of the announcements, he would turn to me and say, "These, sir, are the announcements." And I'm not sure why he needed to tell me that, but it was important to him that we do things in good order. George ended up not coming to church after he had cancer in his abdomen. He had colon cancer. It was nasty. He needed 2 different operations. He almost died. And afterwards was frail, which was not something I ever would have said about him. He was a great tall man who served in the Second World War as a fighter pilot on an aircraft carrier. I miss him. And I'm still in regular contact with his wife, Lorna, who is probably listening to us on YouTube if the audio is working this morning. She's in a retirement home now and is almost 93 and listens to us faithfully every week. So take a moment just to remember George if you knew him and to give thanks for his life whether you knew him or not. He's very much a part of this place still. And I like to think of him sitting in the stands around us and cheering us on as we run the race that's set before us. Let's pause for a minute and remember George. On our annual meeting Sunday, we always abbreviate the service. We cut out a bunch of different things, the psalm and a couple of the lessons and also the children's time. So I'm going to invite the children now to go with Anne, and you're going to go off and do your thing, and we're going to stay up here and try to get through the service fairly quickly so that we can get on to the business. Morgan, are the youth staying with you? You're going out too? Okay. Thank you. So the people who create our cycle of readings that we read week by week by week always give us 4 readings to choose from. And as I thought about the service today and thought about how we really want to confine it to 1 reading for our annual meeting Sunday, here's a passage out of the first letter of John that I just thought spoke to what we need to be a church. So I didn't choose this randomly. It really was one of the 4 that were here, and yet listen to how it describes what we need to be. We know love by this, that Jesus laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for one another. How does God's love abide in anyone who has the world's goods and sees a brother or a sister in need and yet refuses help? Oh, little children, let us love not in word and speech, but in truth and in action. This we'll know that we are from the truth and will reassure our hearts before him whenever our hearts condemn us. For God is greater than our hearts, and God knows everything. Beloved, if our hearts don't condemn us, we have boldness before God and receive from God whatever we ask because we obey God's commandments and do what is pleasing to God. And this is God's commandment, that we should believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and to love one another just as he commanded us. And all who obey his commandments abide in him, and he abides in them. And by this we know that he abides in us, by the Spirit that he has given us. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So we need to love not in words, but in truth and in action. Microphone is going up and down. I'm not sure why. I'm going to pull it a little closer to me and see if that works better. Interesting phrase, isn't it? It's interesting to kind of play around with what that means and what that might look like in the kind of practical, tangible ways to do it. Ponder that with me. I opened the Friday newsletter blurb that I write every week, acknowledging a couple of significant milestones in the life of our congregation. And for those of you who don't get that e-newsletter or who get it but didn't open it, because I know half of you do that, I can tell. We've hit 2 really significant milestones this month. First one is that on Easter Sunday, our Welcoming Today, Building Tomorrow fund went into 6 figures. We topped $100,000, which I think is utterly remarkable. We pledged to give around 118 by the end of this year. We're pretty close to being on track to do that. Most congregational capital campaigns that I've ever been a part of bring in somewhere around 75 or 80% and figure that's good news. We are looking to bring in, if things stay on track, somewhere around 90 to 95%. That's astonishing. Look around you. It's people in this room who have given that money, 100 grand, over and above what we give just to keep the place going. Remarkable. Thank you. The other, I think, significant milestone that's happened or is about to happen, maybe will happen by the end of the month, cross your fingers, phase 2 of our building project is almost done. It is cringing. It's almost done. There are little bits of trim. There's a bit of baseboard. There's some venting for the fan. I mean, we are within spitting distance, and that's for somebody who's not very good at spitting. We are that close to being finished. Holy cow. Now, we don't have the elevator yet, and we don't have enough money to do that yet. And we're going to make an appeal to the Ontario Trillium Fund this summer in order to bring in the balance of the funds, because I can't imagine us raising another 100 grand. Can you? You're not supposed to laugh that hard. But we are getting somewhere. And all going well, Trillium will give us enough money to do the elevator and also to fix the roof. And the building will be in pretty good shape, and we will really be able to welcome people in ways that we haven't before. And that's exciting. Already we have a ramp that gets you up to the lawns. Already we have a bathroom downstairs that is big enough and has enough room in it for somebody who has to work around with a scooter, and who also has a baby change table so that if you're a parent with 3 diaper bags, you have somewhere to change your baby as well. Things are moving. Things are changing. These are milestones to celebrate. And on an annual meeting Sunday, it's appropriate and good to say, wow, congratulations. And the temptation, whenever you hit a milestone, is to say, not wow, but phew, that's over. Now we can just get back to being normal. Really? Because our purpose here really wasn't to build an elevator or to build a bathroom or to put in a ramp. Our purpose was to do ministry. Our purpose was to offer a welcoming presence in new ways. And all of these things that we've been doing, which are important and true, are tools for that. But they're just tools for that. They're not the achievement. They're just giving us a few more tools to use. And I think the temptation to say phew instead of wow is, there's 3 different parts of it, right? One of it is, it's been an awful lot of work this far. And when you hit a milestone, it's nice to be able to rest and clink your glasses and celebrate. I think another part of it is that we live in a society that encourages us to think about groups like us as a charity. Well, I don't know how you deal with charities, but by and large, my approach to charity is that I give them money and they do good work. And that's probably better than giving money to somebody who doesn't do good work. But once the check leaves my bank account, there's not much more that I have to do with the Red Cross and World Vision and Doctors Without Borders. I mean, that's the transaction that I go through with all of those other secular charities. And it's easy for us to think that that's what we're doing here too. Except really, it's not, is it? On the front of our bulletin every week, we describe ourselves as an intercultural community. And on the front of the website, I added one extra word now. It just says a Christian intercultural community. And I think there's a difference between being a charity and being a community. We spent a lot of time over the last 10 years talking about what it means to be intercultural. I think it's good also to remind ourselves about what it means to be a community. And I think that's some of what that opening hymn was trying to talk about too. I was remembering different ways in which I think we've done that really well this year. I was remembering the Sunday when Amy Lynn beat me to the punchline in the children's story. We were talking, I was talking, I asked the kids, first of all, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then I asked this preacherly question, what do you think God wants you to be when you grow up? And Amy Lynn, who was sitting right here, said, well, I think what you need to do is follow your passions and figure out what you love most and allow that to make you the best person you can be, and that's where God is leading you. And I thought, although I didn't say it, okay, I can go home now. Because she got it. That is what we're about. That's exactly what we're about. And you see, those passions and those loves have to be tested in community. Because otherwise they could just be a little bit of last night's dinner that's making us get excited. We test our passions and we test our loves in community. And we encourage each other to be the best selves we can possibly be. That's what it means to be in community. That's what it means to be Christian community. That's what it means to be that house where all are welcome that we sang about in the opening hymn. She got it. And somehow or other, in important ways, our community is helping her do that. I want us to keep doing that. I want us to do that more. I want us to find ways to do that, not just for Amy Lynn, but for every teenager in our place. And for anybody else who comes in the door too. And when we build an elevator so that more people can come in, I want us to do that for them too. Because that's really what we need. This society is so focused on competition and on blame and on negativity to create a place where people are safe, where they are known, where they are named, where they can have authentic conversation where they can be called to be their best self in community, where everybody else is doing the same thing and we aren't competing with each other for that. That's what we need to be. Thank you, Amy Lynn. Some of you will remember Catherine Dunn. Catherine is a member of our congregation. We don't see her very often, and that's partly because she lives in Pickering with her family. It's partly because she has 3 little kids, and one of them was born with congenital kidney problems. I told you when we baptized Charlie a little bit about his story. Charlie was born with the kidneys that were really not functioning and were going to get worse. And they were told when he was born that eventually he would need a transplant. And they were going to work hard at trying to drag it out as long as possible, because the older he is and the bigger he is, the easier it is for a transplant to take. And the better the medication works, and the better medicine gets, and the skills of the surgeons and all the rest, the time has come. Charlie's about 6. So they've dragged it on that long. The surgery is scheduled for the 29th of April. Catherine will be the donor. And so she's going to give up one of her kidneys, and an adult kidney will be transplanted into Charlie across his abdomen. It's too big to fit in the regular place. Apparently they don't even take out the old ones. They're not working very well, but it doesn't matter. He'll have this new one in an odd place. And so I'm going to see Catherine on Tuesday. The kids in the church school are making a bunch of cards that I can take with me. But from Pickering, Catherine wants to stay in touch with us and with me. And she gave me permission to tell you or remind you of her story, because you've been a part of it. And because Charlie's been in some of our Christmas pageants, and so is his brother Henry. And they've been part of our church school until it just became impossible for them to get here. And she sometimes even listens to the YouTube. So she's a part of us. And she reached out at this crisis in her life to me, because this is a place where she can feel safe and named and loved and connected with something bigger than her. That's who we want to be, isn't it? That's what God is for. That's why we gather together, because none of us can get through life alone. And every one of us has struggles in our lives. Catherine's just the one that came to mind because I've got an appointment to see her on Tuesday, and because I have permission to tell her stories. I've heard lots of them I don't have permission to tell. And that's okay too. That's what we want to be. That's the kind of ministry we want to be able to offer. And when more people can get into the building through our elevator, we want to be able to do that with them too. That's why we're doing all this, isn't it? But it's not even just about kind of helping people where they hurt or helping people as individuals become their best selves. We've started this refugee program. We're sponsoring a couple of people we don't even know. We're reaching out to a family halfway around the world. I was sitting in the fundraiser that we had in February, and people were up dancing at the end of it. And we had a ball learning about Eritrean culture. It was great fun, even though half the congregation was sick and didn't come. Those of us who were well enough to be there had a wonderful time. And somebody's friend spoke to me. She's not a member of the congregation. Her friend had kind of hauled her in. And she said to me about halfway through, I came because my friend brought me, and I thought it would be a fun way to spend the afternoon. I didn't quite know what this was about. I want to give you some money towards those refugees. This is just so inspiring. Wow. So when people understand what we're doing, they get excited. And when people understand what we're doing, not just for ourselves, but for people we don't even know, that's inspiring. That's what it means to be church. That's why we're here. That's what it means, I think, to love in truth and in action rather than just listen to inspiring words. And that's hard for a preacher to admit, right? We like words. We need you. We are not a charity where they do the work. We are not an entertainment place where you sit in the seats and watch the show at the front. We are a community. We are working together to bring grace and healing and hope and respect and dignity and sanctuary, safety, authenticity to this corner of Toronto. Trusting that if we do that and other people do it in their corners, that it will make a difference to the whole world. Thank you for the ways that you participate in our ministry. And as we move through our business today, listen for the ways that we can connect with that ministry. Listen for the ways to celebrate what we're already doing. Listen for the ways that we can deepen and enhance and strengthen the ways that we are together, God's healing, hopeful, joyful community. Amen. So Nancy, we're not going to sing yet because we cut out a couple of hymns to save time. But there are just a few announcements, and then we'll go into the prayers and the offering and all of those things. First of all, welcome. We're glad you're here. There's coffee now as well as tea. They're at the back of the church. And when the service draws to a close, we'll invite you to go and refresh your cup if you wish. But please don't walk out the door. We need you. And we'd be glad to have you here for the meeting too. Bunch of different meetings got canceled last week because of the ice storm. Thank you for the dozen of you who actually showed up, even though I told you to stay home in an email. It was delightful to be with you. We had a tiny little service here. And we're going to have to reschedule all 3 meetings that were planned for last Sunday. So that'll be coming, and watch your email about that. One of the meetings that is already going ahead is the worship committee, and that'll be on the 1st of May. So members of the worship committee, please mark that in your calendar. The United Church Women are doing their gift basket auction again, and all the gift baskets are out here. So after the meeting, go and have a look at them. There's what, 2 dozen of them? There's 20. There you go. That was a pretty good estimate. Come and have a look at them, bid on them. They'll be there for 3 weeks. And on the 6th of May, they'll close the auction. They'll pull out the boxes. They'll figure out who made the biggest bid on each one, and you get a Mother's Day present to take home. So there you go. And in the middle of that, you're supporting the kind of work that the UCW does, which is both work around here, things in, helping to improve the building and the ministry of our place, but also some of the community charities that they work through as well. Congregational Life Committee is planning a trip to St. Jacobs on the 23rd of June. It's time to start thinking about that, and we'll tell you a little more about that in what's happening next week. It'll be a chance to go to the village of St. Jacobs, to go to the St. Jacobs Market, and also go to the Dune Heritage Village, which is similar to Black Creek Village, only it's set in 1914 instead of in 1865. So it's kind of neat to walk through it and see the changes in technology that happened between Black Creek Village, if you know that place, and 1914. So recommend it to you. Think about it if you're wanting to go to that. 27th of May is our Asian Heritage Service. Our guest speaker will be Chris, and I can't pronounce his last name yet, but I'll figure it out. Chris is a colleague of mine at the General Council Office. He works in the area of faith development. Comes from Sri Lanka. And he's a lovely guy, warm, friendly, enthusiastic, passionate about what he does. And I think he'll be a good speaker. It's the first time in years that we've had a South Asian instead of an East Asian as our speaker for this service. So it should be kind of fun. I'm looking forward to it. And next Sunday afternoon, the youth are off shooting bows and arrows. Not at me. So parents, if you haven't seen that notice yet, there's a problem. But I put it up here just in case, just in case your kids are as faithful with notices as mine used to be. Those are all the announcements I have. Oh, there was one more announcement. Nancy's Cantala Choir is singing here next Sunday in worship, so please bring your friends. And then the following Saturday night, the 5th of May, is their spring concert. And Nancy, you should tell us about the spring concert very briefly.
We're highlighting Russian music, so the girls have had to learn Russian. And my piano is going to be here next Sunday.
Cool.
Because it's Rachmaninoff and it requires a huge piano. So it's going to be awesome. Yeah.
Excellent. So we're looking forward to it. So here in the church, the choir will be worshiping with us on April 29. The concert will be on May 5, and it's at 7 p.m. on May 5. Here. Yes, their spring concert is here at Forest Hill. Thank you. Those are the announcements I have for today. Let's continue in worship then as we bring ourselves and our offerings before God. We do indeed praise you, O gracious God. Thank you for these gifts and for all you have given to us. Use them and use us to bring your hope to the world. In Jesus' name, amen. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to collect our prayers collectively together. Let's just bring our thoughts and prayers before God. Let us pray. We are so grateful for the ministry of this place that we call home, O God. We are grateful for the work of each person who serves on a committee, for each person who has cut a bush or rolled pastry or made a cinnamon bun, for each person who has bought something at the men's auction, or sat on the bus to go on a trip, or struggled with the question of how to enhance the intercultural nature of our worship. We are so grateful for those who give time and leadership, and for those who don't, for those who come and support and encourage, for those who feel your presence when they arrive. For all the different ways that we can together work with you to provide sanctuary and respite and sacred space, a place where people are named and feel safe. And so we ask your blessing upon this ministry and upon the work that we do together. And we turn our thoughts to the places where that ministry is so necessary. We think about the people within our congregation who struggle with barriers and brokenness and things that need healing and things that will never be healed. We remember those who are facing hard decisions, who are struggling to discern what you want them to be. And we think of those outside our doors too. We think of the anger and the resentment and the violent language that we hear in our politics and in the news that we watch day by day. We think about the ways in which people are not called to be the best they could be. The ways that people are resentful when they don't get what they think they deserve. Think about all the different ways in which love could make a difference, and how tempting it is to walk the other direction instead. Come speak to our hearts and speak through our hearts. The power of love and the strength of kindness might truly make a difference not only within these walls, but outside them as well. Week by week, we hold people's names before you. Week by week, we reflect on ways that your love might flow through our hands to them. Hear us as we do that again. We remember Nellie and Paula, Les and Joanne, Mary, Emma, Danish, Carolyn, Asmat, Million, Catherine and Charlie and their family, Paul, David, Estella, Melody, others that we name before you in the silence now. Let us find ways to share your love with them and with all the world. Your love in truth and in action, not just in words. Speak to our hearts, speak through our hands. All these things we pray in the name of the one who taught us to pray together, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. And our final hymn, good strong Easter hymn, Christ is alive. Let's sing together. So when you go from this place after the meeting, go with love and joy and justice and peace. Go and bring God's good news to all the earth. People are hurting. People are longing for hope. Go and let God's love shine through you in truth and in action. And the blessing of God, Creator, Word, and Spirit, be with us all, this day and forevermore. Amen. So you can be seated. We will give you 3 minutes to sneak out the back door if you need to do that. There is coffee and tea at the back of the service, back of the church. The orange light is on the coffee pot. That's because it's plugged in, and we didn't want to plug both of them in at the same time. The tea should also be hot. So help yourself, pick up something to eat. If you're staying for the meeting, please come back to your seats, and we'll begin the meeting shortly. I understand that at the beginning of the service, there was one of these left at the back. So if you happened to get into church without one this morning because you came at the last minute, we will make more, but in the meantime, remember the loaves and fishes story and share. Would you please?
I can give you guys one. I can share with them.
There we go.
Somebody wants one.
So we have one up for sale, and there are others. We'll call the meeting to order in just a few minutes, but refresh your cup and make yourself comfortable.
Oh. I was up to this. And I realized next week is a write-off for me too, because I'm all day here. You're all day here. His concert's on Saturday night. Oh my God. And then Sunday we're singing, and then I've got this. Yeah. So. Thank you so much. But.
Well, friends, I think we're going to begin the meeting now. If I could just invite you to come and sit down, please. I think we could put candles out. That's fine. So, friends, in the name of Jesus Christ, the King and Head of the Church, I constitute this annual meeting of the Congregation of Forest Hill for all the business that shall properly come before it. Those are the magic words. We normally start these meetings with two motions. The first motion is that we should appoint a chair and a secretary. And I would like to suggest that somebody would move a motion to appoint Beth Harima, who is the chair of our board, to be the chair of this meeting, and to appoint Janet Riddell, who is the secretary of our board, to be the secretary of this meeting. And I see Marianne is very eager to make this motion. Is there a seconder? I saw several different seconds. I'm going to take Esther Paggio as a second. And I will call the question. All in favor? And any opposed? The motion is carried. Madam Chair, before I get rid of the microphone, I should just mention that the second motion that we normally offer to these meetings is to give permission to everyone present to speak. Technically, the only people who are allowed to vote on at least some of the business are people who have signed that membership book and are members of the congregation. And we know that that doesn't include some for some very good reasons. But we have permission through our process to give everyone the right to speak, whether or not you have a vote. And the way we have traditionally functioned in our community is to do that because everybody's voice is important. So, Madam Chair, I would recommend that the first piece of business then would be to entertain a motion of that nature, but you're now sitting in the chair, so I will stop talking and get out of your way.
And it's a relief to get Steve stopping talking before 12. I wish Michael was here because he'd be quite excited about it. Thank you, Steve, as always, for opening up the meeting so effectively. If we could have a motion to indicate that both members and non-members are permitted to speak on any and all motions presented during the meeting, I would appreciate it. I think we have Marianne again, and sorry, don't have my glasses on. Who's that? Oh, Sandra. I also see Mary there. I better keep my glasses on, I think, for this. Could I see a show of hands as to whether all in favor? Thank you. And any opposed? None opposed. So this is passed. Thank you. We're going to have the opening prayer, and we're going to give Steve a break, and I will do the prayer. So if we could have just one moment. Lord God, we take time now to think about the work of this church over the past year, celebrate the successes, talk about the way we reach out not only within our community but the broader community. We ask that you be with us as we consider our work over the past year as well as look forward to the next year. In Jesus' name, amen. So we're going to try something different again about the format. We don't have slides. Is this too loud?
I can turn it down, but then you need to speak a little louder.
Okay. Oh.
Easy.
See what happens when I speak louder? My family should be here at this time to tell you. Any event, we're doing something even different from the last time. And this will be, we don't have slides. It is just that the individual committee member who prepared the report or their designate will come up and speak to one thing that their committee has done that inspires them and speaks to the work of the church. Then they will take questions relating to the report, and then we will ask to have a motion with respect to the report after the questions are done. And please feel free to ask questions. The reports have been online as well as handed out, and we hope people have had an opportunity to read them. The one person who does not get bound by these rules is our treasurer. mainly because it's difficult to talk about how the finances inspire you, but mostly because another reason is clearly people may have some questions about the finances because there has been a lot of activities here in the church. Also, that may be a question about our work on phase 2 of the accessibility and property, so feel free to ask additional questions or spend a little time on those items. And we will try to get people out of here because I know you're all busy. So that's how we are going to proceed. And so our first item is the minister's report. So Steve, you're back up again.
There we go. Well, and I don't think I have too much more to say. I think I already gave my report. So I told you many of the things that inspire me about this place, and I'd encourage you to think back to the sermon. So I won't take any more of your time back. But if anyone has questions about the work that I do or the things that I said or the direction that I hope we're going, please, by all means, I'm willing to take questions.
So as there doesn't, so I should say, for the people who report other than Steve here, and if you have a question, we'll run a microphone out to you if we can't be heard, or the person making the report will repeat it, and that way we'll know what the question is. Yeah. And so Steve has given his report. Could we have a motion to accept the minister's report? Sarah, and seconded by John? Yeah. Oh, those glasses. I think I have to get them fixed. Could we have a show of hands for all in favor and against? None. So we will move to the next item, which is approval of the minutes for the 76th annual congregational meeting that was held last year on March 26th. Could I have a motion in that regard? Oh, Marianne Ono, and a seconder. Linda? No, Linda Kawasar. And could we have a show of hands all in favor? And opposed? None opposed, so that motion carries. The next item, many of you will remember, is we had a special congregational meeting on June 25th, which was to go over some recent developments with respect to the furnace, the replacement of the furnace, the need to take out a loan, as well as some changes in phase 2 of our accessibility project resulting from surprises that arose in the course of the renovations. And I was glad to see the church encounters the same thing I do whenever I state that there's always surprises. So on June 25th, there was a meeting to go over those items, and the congregation approved a number of different items with respect to replacing of the boiler, as well as changes to the plans for the phase 2 of the accessibility project. Again, I'd like to have a motion to approve those minutes along with a seconder. I think we have a motion there. Again, I could not, I really got to get these young. And seconder, Danny. And all in favor? And opposed? None? The motion is carried. So we now move to the annual report section. So the first one to be reported on is the official board. And so that would be me. And what inspires me, and I was doing a little bit of thinking about it, but then Steve's sermon made me change my mind what I was going to talk about. Because now I thought about, it's the people who make this church. It makes it a welcoming place, inclusive, brings together people of many backgrounds and cultures. What are we doing? Well, we're all seeking a deeper connection with God, each other, and the larger world. And all are welcome in this place. And that's what inspires me. And I think as each person reports on their reports, and as you read them, you will see how the activities we undertake, even when they seem very mundane, I believe all strive towards that goal, which I think really does inspire me and explains how we're able to continue in an increasingly secular world. So the report, my report is contained in the annual report, and if we could have a motion to accept that report from the official board. Marianne, and is that Sarah? Okay, thank you. All in favor? And opposed? None? Motion carried. The next report, I assume Linda, that Linda's going to deliver, and it's for the congregational life.
Okay, good morning. Yeah, okay, I'm on. So most of you, I'm presuming, have read it. I say the same thing year after year after year. Congregational life is about you, the congregation, about building community, about having events to foster that community building and welcoming and so forth. You probably looked in there, you see for most, I think almost every month of the year, we've got something going. Whether it's apple pies and all the things that Steve mentioned in the opening prayers and in the closing prayers and all the prayers in between. We do a lot because it's important to us to make sure that we're like family. It's just not the place you show up to Sunday morning, sit for an hour, then go home and then have life outside the church. Church is life. It's not just some place where we come and we stare at him. So I think in terms of what was our most important things, I think in talking with Linda, and I think we both agreed there was two things I think we felt were the most important. First one was the Know Your Neighbor event. Even though it did sort of get its kickoff in 2016, the majority of it happened in 2017. And those were neat events that happened in people's homes with small groups where everybody really got to know each other that much better rather than the, hi Heather, nice day, nice to see you, bye, see you next week. So we got to really get to understand each other that much more and learn things about each other that might have known you for 10 years, but I never knew that about you. And so that was one great thing. The other great thing we did was, I think in November, it was more like the kickoff to Christmas that we did with some tea and entertainment, and we raised about $700 towards the funds that are needed when our refugees do finally get here, because they do need money to help support them for the first year, so they get a good start in their life in Canada. And again, another way of sort of love in action, but in an outreach kind of way. And we had a lot of fun to do it. Unfortunately, I was one of those sick people, so I never actually got to enjoy the full fruits of the labor. But I think the process of putting it together, the fun, the excitement, the trying on of clothes and fashion shows and everything else, another great way for building community. And I'm going to do something which I always forget to do every single time I come up here. I'm going to thank all the people in the committee, and I'm going to ask you to stand. Okay, that includes you, Linda, who is our chair. So just stand up, because without these people, none of this stuff happens. Okay, and then you do become the church on Sunday morning for an hour. Come on, ladies. I know you're there. I can see you. Esther, Woobit, Merlin, Deborah, Linda, get up. Okay, and I am going to have Linda stay standing, Linda, because without her, she's been doing this well before Stephen and I ever showed up on the scene. This has all been because of Linda. So, any questions? Okay, good. So I move for a motion to accept the report as given. All right.
That looked like Young made the motion and Sandra seconded it. All in favor, please, hands. And any nays? No? Hardly expected we'd see a nay on that one. The next one is the report of the church school coordinator, and that would be Anne, but I don't see her here.
She's out with kids. Let me go and find her and you do the next one.
Okay, so we're going to skip over. Oh, already?
Can't have both mics on at the same time.
Already we're just going a little bit off focus here, it seems. So now Morgan, I do see you're here. If Morgan could come up to report as the youth group leader.
Hey guys. So I have listed out in the report, some of the activities we've done. So if you want a full accounting of what we do, it's in there. But Steve asked us to talk a little bit about what's important and maybe some stories about how the work is going. So most of the time, I don't know what I'm doing. And I am really blessed to be so supported by this community. You guys have had so much confidence in me since the very beginning, and it's really having the confidence of this community behind me that has allowed me to be as successful as I've been with the youth group. I think my guiding principle with the youth group is really similar to what we've heard from Linda about how church is. It's really about community and creating intentional community with the youth, and being a community that is outside of school and outside of the mainstream culture, and being a place where we draw the circle wide. That's always my sort of guiding mantra, is how do we draw the circle wide and be inclusive to all of the youth. One thing that's really surprised me and delighted me is how the youth group doesn't just touch youth whose parents come to this congregation and whose families are involved in this congregation, but we involve youth who come on their own or come with friends. And so that really makes a difference. And I'll just really quickly relate a story which technically happened this year and not last year, but is therefore the product of the things that we did last year. So as you may know, we were on a retreat last weekend. Hashtag Ice Storm Retreat 2018. Yeah. And so we got stuck. We were supposed to come back on Sunday. We didn't make it back till Monday. Yeah, for those of you who didn't know, the parents knew. Steve knew. I for sure knew. But you guys might not have known that we had a bonus day on the retreat where we were stuck basically inside. And Sunday, we had no programming planned. We had a speaker, but he had left. We had a band, they left. So it was just the leaders who I've been working with in the presbytery and the youth. And what we found was just the community really acting and behaving as a community and coming together. I've never seen a longer day in front of me. 14 hours, I was like, why is this day a week long? That we need to come up with programming for youth so that they're not bored, but they're also getting something out of this. And, the kids pitched in, the youth pitched in. We didn't hear people complaining or whining, or they all just wanted to be a part of things. And probably the highlight of that for a lot of us was we decided on Sunday to do church. We're like, well, it's Sunday. I guess we could do church. There are some ministers here, so let's do it. And so after lunch, we spent an hour preparing for what we were going to do in an hour, and threw together a church service, which consisted of prayerful Tai Chi warm-ups and some YouTube videos of songs, which provided some, hilarious relief when deodorant commercials came up before them, and and then, running around, should we do communion? We should do communion. What are we going to do communion with? I'm running to the cafeteria. I'm like, all right, we got leftover sub buns, and I'm pretty sure there's grape juice in the fruit punch, so let's have communion. For the record, the children tell me that sub buns and fruit punch communion taste like Play-Doh, so it's a very memorable communion. But it was one of the most spontaneous and joyful worships I've ever been a part of. And the youth tell me the same thing, that it's one of the best church services they've ever been to. So I don't know, Steve, tips for Play-Doh tasting communion? I don't know if that's going to be a hit. But it was then that I really understood that we had formed a community that could come together in that sort of spontaneous, joyful celebration. And I'm just really looking forward to continuing to work with the youth and build on everything that we've done.
Do we have any questions for Morgan? If not, in that case...
I think we should point out that of the 80 kids who were at this presbytery retreat, 6 of them came from our group. I think that's a real tribute to Morgan and her leadership.
Great. And so can we entertain a motion to accept the report? Oh, Anne's coming. Don't worry, Anne's coming next. Okay. Okay, so a motion to accept the report. Oh, is that Lori as well? Lori at the back and seconded by Danny. All in favor? And any opposed? None opposed. The motion is carried. And the next item will be the church school report by Anne.
Thank you. What to say about this year? Our focus has been tithing, because up until last year, when I would put the little wooden box out, the kids would just look at it and laugh and say, "Why is there a little wooden box on the table?" And I would just shake my head, growing quietly, and say, "Okay, you know how upstairs when we do communion, everybody puts money in the plate? Yeah, it's very important. That money goes to a lot of important things." So after a long conversation about this, and my pocket's getting emptier as I was putting all my change in this box, the kids started figuring out that maybe they should be doing so too. But there was this one occasion when our youngest member showed up and realized, wait a minute, I don't have money. What am I going to put in the box? And she said, "I don't know. What do you think?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know. You got any ideas in there?" Oh, I know what to do. She empties her pocket out, throws it in, and I said, "What's in the box?" "Love, of course." So, almost every session since then, love goes into the box with the change. So there's an awful lot of love in that box, and the box is only about a little treasure chest. And the kids are now past that part, up to now they're all trying to keep track of how much we have, how much we put together, and we keep changing our minds about what to do with it. Originally, we were going to give it to Syria. Then we were going to use it for the Christmas catalog that came out. And now we're not sure what to do with it. So we will again have that conversation. So that's been part of what our year has been about. Becoming our own community, whether it's the regular group, which is like 3 or 4 who turn up regularly, or now up to 5 or 6. Or the ones who come and see us at Christmas and Easter and join in. And everybody introduces everybody. And if you don't get your name right, the other kids correct you. It's brilliant. Except when your name is Ariel one week and Mermaid the next. It's a little confusing, but it's only for the teacher. So that's our year, in a nutshell. Is this thing on?
So if we could have a motion to accept the church school coordinator's report. Oh, I saw Morgan was like really, she was there that, she had both hands so I could actually see her. So that's good. And a seconder. And I see Mary Hendricks. And so all in favor? Okay, and any opposed? None? The motion carries. Thank you, Anne. The next is the property committee, and Steve, I believe you're going to deliver that report?
I am kind of hoping that maybe this will be my last year to deliver a property committee report. We're looking for a couple of extra bodies on the property committee, so if you're interested, speak to me. I think the most inspiring event for me that the property committee sponsored were actually I'm going to pick 2, but they're really 2 iterations of the same event, and that's the outdoor landscaping days that we've done. Property committee does a lot of different things, and some of it is not very exciting. But wow, was it ever neat to see 25 or 30 people gather together, and some of them were outside and some of them were inside, and we were looking at the daffodils coming up today that we planted last fall, and just the sense of community that builds around a pair of hedge clippers and taking down the ivy is really quite remarkable. Every time we do one of these work days, I remember the first one. And I remember the year that we took 7 trailer loads of brush out of the hill. I think if we did that now, there'd be nothing left on the hill. The place is changing, and the grounds look beautiful. And it's because we've had people, not just from our congregation, but from the school and the Champion Life, and even 1 or 2 from the NA group as well, who have gathered together to help take care of it. So bravo to each of you who've been part of it. It's kind of nice to see people taking a sense of ownership around the place, and delightful to see property and caring for property being a tool for ministry instead of just a chore that a few of us have to do. So, thank you.
So any questions for Steve? And I know there's a couple other of the property committee members here. So we don't have any questions. In that case, could I please have a motion to accept the report of the property committee? Oh, see, I knew John would be all over that one. With Mary, I believe, seconding. All in favor, please? Okay. And then opposed? No one's opposed, so that item is approved. The next one is tenant relations, and for that one, I think what inspires me the most, and I'm going to give a shout out to Steve for helping me figure this one out. Thank you, Steve. Is it's not about the money that we're able to bring in through our tenants, which of course we're very grateful for because it's allowed us to continue functioning and do repairs to the church and everything. So those are very wonderful things. But what it is that's inspiring is how this church is able to offer space to people in the community who are not of substantial means, yet want to celebrate a birthday, an anniversary, a baptism, you know, some other event in their life of their family and their community. But they can't find any space in which to have a larger celebration. And Forest Hill United Church is one of the few churches in this area, or a few places of worship in this area, shall I say, that can offer space at a very reasonable rental rate and is prepared to have groups come in who have no affiliation with this church and use our space for those types of celebrations. And when we think about having a church that is open to more than its own members and is out and giving back to the community, I think although we are in fact charging for this space, by having the reasonable rental, we're reaching out to the community and letting people celebrate these events at a place that they feel comfortable in, and they can, I think it's really great that we can have a church that's very lively, as Janet will tell you, not only during the week, not only during religious services, but outside of that. So that's, that's what I think is inspiring about tenant relations and shows the work of this church. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask about the report? I know, fascinating read, wasn't it? Page turner. Could I have a motion to accept Mary Ann Ono and I think Lori, again, at the back? And all in favor? And, yeah. And any nays? No? So I think we can say that report has been approved. The next one is M&P report. Paul Cutler is unable to be here today, but don't worry, we have other members of the committee, and Mary Ann Ono has agreed to step in his place, so thank you, Mary Ann.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I have to acknowledge, first of all, Paul, even though he's not able to necessarily be physically with us, has been providing enormous support by email and, answering questions and just generally being wonderful as he is. So great credit to Paul for that. The current membership of the Ministry and Personnel Committee is Paul and myself and Maria and Marco. And Maria and I are kind of training up and learning. So we appreciate your patience. But beyond that, my job is to, and it's a wonderful job, I have to say this is such a blessing, to have the opportunity to thank the people who are doing such wonderful work in this church. First of all, Stephen, thank you as our minister, as our guiding light, as the person who challenges us and inspires us and is there for us both during service time and beyond service time. And we love you for it, so thank you, Stephen. Beyond that, though, on a personal note, as a mother,
I have 2 kids, and one of them is at the age of the youth group, and one of them is still at the age of, or mental age of the Sunday school. Ian. My son Ian is in the youth group. He went to the retreat that Morgan was talking about, the one that lasted beyond the planned time. And he came home and he was just so, it's hard to describe, just so filled with light and so happy. I'm tearing up here. But it meant so much to us that he could have that chance to be with people who think and love and are together in the way that they are. So I want to thank Morgan for her guidance of the youth group. And I want to thank Anne for her guidance of the younger children. Neil is in her group. He's 11 now. For those who don't know, he's autistic. So mentally, forgive me for tearing up, mentally he's at the age of maybe a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. But he loves Anne to pieces. He would love to be here, but thank you. I knew that a meeting for him was maybe too much. So he's not here right now. So thank you to Anne for her leadership for the little ones. Thank you to Angela for her work in the nursery with the tiniest of all of us. And you know, I have to say that as a parent who's had small children, and sometimes I would come here and I couldn't be present in the service because my kids needed care and they were tiny. And I had to look after them and not be here. That her work, we need to appreciate her work. Because as she looks after the littlest of all of us, sorry. As she looks after the littlest of all of us, she frees up the parents to be here and get the renewal that they need at that time. So we need to thank her. We need to thank Michael for all his contributions now and over the years to the property. We need to thank Janet. I was here with Janet when the youth got back from their retreat, and I have to tell you that my car was in the parking lot. I was ready to take them home because that was the plan. My car, the battery gave out. They were a little late getting back from the event, and I was sitting there listening to the radio, and I did not realize that my my front lights were on. It was draining the battery, and the battery gave out. And all the kids came, and we loaded all their stuff into my car. We were ready to go, and it died. And I had no way to get them home. And it was a terribly frightening moment. I didn't know what to do. And Janet was here and gave me a hug and said, "We're going to solve it." And we solved it. And we got them home. So, sorry. So, love to Janet and gratitude to Janet for all the work she does here for the church. Not just for me, but for all of us. And for Paul, and for everyone who gives. And for, what? I said, thanks, Steve, pardon me. Ahem. And, thank you. And for Nancy. I need to tell you that I'm not currently part of the choir, but I have been. And Nancy's commitment to the choir and to this church is phenomenal. I've seen it. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you. She's been wonderful, and she continues to be wonderful. So hopefully I've thanked everyone. If I've missed anyone, I apologize. But we have a wonderful... Well, obviously I've missed someone, so thank you to Vili Linga, who has been wonderful in helping us with the caretaking as well. So thank you. So my job has been to say thank you, and I can't say it enough. I could go on and on. We could spend all day here, and I could just yammer on, but I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop and say we are so lucky to have the people we have. And can we all just take a moment and be grateful and say thank you?
Thank you very much, Marianne. That was such a heartfelt report, and I think it is a reflection again of what we see in this church and the vibrancy of the church, that we have such wonderful people who contribute so much to this church through their ministry work and make it so that we can function as a community. And so, Marianne, thank you very much for those words to expand upon the report. Any questions regarding the report? If not, I'd like to have a motion to approve. Morgan's again, and she's waving so that I can actually see. And then it's Merlin. I think Merlin has seconded. Woobit, don't worry, we'll get you for another motion. All in favor? Hands up, good. And any dissenting votes? None. We can consider this approved. The next is the United Church Women. We will not be requiring a motion for that report. We simply received that report. And so Sandra is going to come and speak about the report.
Hello. United Church Women, we help supply for the coffee, we make sure we get food and all these other things, so we collect money because we want to repair things when we get short. We like to give it to charities and Mission and Service Fund and a whole bunch of other charities for women and children. The most inspiring thing I think we've done last year was the first year, as Steve requested we make Christmas baskets for the people who are alone in the church or the people who couldn't come to church, just to let them know we cared. I found the most generous people offering things to put in the baskets. We had a fun time assembling all the baskets because we sprinkled things all over the place, and we made sure they had enough things in there. And we all did it with a thing of love. We were giving to somebody, we didn't even know who we were giving to, because Steve wouldn't tell us, but we didn't want to know anyways. But it was just, we're giving it to brighten somebody's day when things weren't doing right. And it was just, we were kind of, whatever you do to the least of my brothers, you do to me, is what Jesus said. And I felt like that's what we were trying to do. We were just trying to give away some love. And that's part of the community. You were part of our community, and I wanted you to feel that's what we were trying to do for you. And that was the most inspiring thing, because it was giving it for people we weren't expecting anything back from. And that I thought was the most inspiring thing, and we want to do that again and again. So that's it for now.
Any questions for Sandra?
I want to add that I had the incredible privilege of delivering those baskets. And I need to say there were times when I felt like a fraud because I was delivering something I didn't help make. But my goodness, were they ever highly received. People were just so grateful to be remembered. And a couple stand out in my mind, but everyone who received them was really touched and felt a sense of connection. So thank you to each of the people who participated in that one. It was big.
And thanks. So the United Church Women report has been received, and now we have the report of the presbytery representative, and it's you. It's not Earl. We did not know who she was going to designate in her place, so. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Wendy Cameron, and I'm one of the members of the presbytery. And I must admit to a certain degree of panic when I read Steve's email about finding something inspirational to talk about, because I'm a member of the presbytery. So after a chat with Steve, I thought what I would do is talk a bit about what the presbytery does. Some of you may already know this. Some of you may not. As a member of a church, I had really no clue what the presbytery was, where they fit in, what they did. As a child, I thought it was a building. It's not a building. So as you all know, we're part of the Southwest Presbytery, which is one of 4 of the Toronto Conference. I always want to call it a convention. Southwest has 55 churches and ministries that report to it. Has anyone ever been to a presbytery meeting? Yay, Morgan. Okay, a few people. So, presbytery meetings involve a lot of discussion and a lot of voting. The voting gets sent upward to General Council and helps to determine, and to the conferences, I guess, and helps to determine the direction the United Church is going to take. So a meeting will have a lot of remits to discuss about different changes that will take place nationwide for the United Church. 3 people from Forest Hill have been on the presbytery group. Myself, Earl Holt, who wrote the wonderful write-up for the report, and Ernie has also been on. We're all members of the Intercultural and Diverse Community team, which is kind of fitting for members of our church, that really is to look at how diversity is reflected within our congregations and how can we help people encourage diversity, accept warmly, blend, learn about each other. Last year, a lot of our focus ended up on the expo with the moderator coming to visit. So one of the things our little team did was we had a table with lots of literature on it, and then we put a big map up so everybody who attended could come and point out where in the world they were from. So it was really kind of fun to see how many different countries and places, different cities, people from the Southwest Presbytery came from. So one of the things that's going to change, and Earl alluded to this in her write-up, is that at the end of the year, the presbyteries will no longer exist. They are downsizing the organizational structure. Instead of, we have 55 churches in Southwest Presbytery, they're collapsing it into regional councils. So what they have devised is 17 regional councils for all of Canada. So Manitoba is 1 regional council. Saskatchewan is 1. Toronto's all broken up. We're actually regional council number 11. They haven't got names yet. So throughout this year, you'll probably be hearing more information about how the structure will change for governance and how we'll have access as individuals in a church to making some of these decisions and informing some of the decisions the General Council will be making. So it's a significant change, and we're not really sure how it's going to play out yet, but stay tuned for new information, and we'll all figure it out together. I think that's it.
Thanks, Wendy. Any questions for the presbytery? If not, if I could have a motion to approve the report of the presbytery representatives, and I think Sandra, John, all in favor? And any dissents? I do not see any, so we'll consider that passed. The next one is the Refugee Committee, and who have we got? The head of the committee is in fact here, so Mimbari, please.
So the Refugee Committee was established in this fiscal year. Our first meeting was on April 30th, 2017. And it didn't occur to me until Woobet mentioned this a couple of months ago. Steve, you can tell me whether or not this is true. She said, this is the first time that Forest Hill United Church has actually, in its 70-year history, that we've sponsored refugees. So that's inspiring that we were, so we started the committee with a few members, many of whom are here today. I'm going to pull a Linda. I'm going to ask members of the committee to stand up. There's Wendy, Woobet, Linda, Kayla, Gina, Reverend Steve, of course.
I'm on every committee.
Okay. And of course, the fact that we've been able to have your commitment over the past year is what makes it inspiring. You, as well as, I think when I look around, everybody here has at some point or another, I'm sorry, you could sit down, at some point or another over this past year said, how can we help? And whether that's words of reassurance, or that's you coming to one of the fundraising committees, or just, saying those simple words, how can we help, has been somewhat life-changing for me. And more importantly, it's been life-changing for the 2 refugees that we sponsored, Asmat and Million. Over this past year, as a committee, we've done a lot of sort of administrative work, things like budgets and fundraising and so on. And I can see why the finance committee would be exempt from the whole inspiring thing, because so I think that the most inspiring work that we've done was very early on as a committee. We sat down downstairs in the kitchen, and it was a beautiful spring day, and we wrote a letter to Asmat and Million. And the gist of it was to say, listen, we have come together as a church and set up a committee to help you out of this terrible situation that you're in. And if you have any questions about, what it means to come to Canada, if you have any concerns, or if you have any problems that we can help with, we're here for you. And we wrote this letter, and we sent it in an email. I had to follow up because I wasn't sure about how well they would understand the English. And along with the email, we'd sent pictures of the committee members, who, by the way, is also, we're doing this in collaboration with Champion Life, the Champion Life congregation, which is also exciting that we're doing this with the church. Anyhow, when I spoke to Asmat and Million and follow up to the letter, and I said, we've set up this committee, and this is what we're saying. What we're saying is we're here for you. And it was so difficult for them to grasp this concept of there being, a group of people there in Canada who have come together to take care of their welfare, their well-being. I think they're still sort of grappling with it. From time to time, I'll have a conversation. For example, we've just sent them a care package. There's a rabbi that's been helping us, Rabbi David Seed from Adath, Israel Synagogue, and he's going to Israel today. And we've been able to send them care packages today, and I'm sure they'll be delighted when they open the package. We put together a number of Canadian-themed things like Toronto t-shirt and caps and maple syrup. And the message is, whether it's in the letter or is in the package, it is, we're here for you and we care. And why is it that they're having a difficult time grasping this? Well, look at their life history. They were born in Eritrea. By the time they're of age 9, 10, 12 years old, no, actually even earlier, maybe 6, 8 years old, ever since then they've lived in very hostile environments, whether that was Eritrea under a dictatorship, later on in refugee camps, and then on to Israel. And the message all along has been, you're not welcome, you're not welcome, you're not welcome. And finally, here's a message from the church that says, you are welcome. We look forward to having you amongst us. We care about you. And, what's inspiring is the transformation of their spirit from one of hopelessness to one of hope. And if I could have recorded their voice before we sponsored them, before we said we're here for you, and after, if I could have recorded their voice, I would have said everything from, something that was muted and despondent to something that is cheerful and joyful now. So that's what is so inspiring about this work.
Do we have any questions? Oh, a question from Marianne, yes.
So I know it's a long, complicated, confusing process, but any word, any update on like where they are in the process of coming to Canada?
So I'll just paraphrase the question, sort of where are we at in this very long process and how much closer are they to coming to Canada?
I think I heard that question in precisely the same terms from them last week. And what I keep saying is there's been a lot of pressure from Jewish organizations in Canada as well as sponsorship organizations in Canada on the Canadian government to just expedite the whole sponsorship process in Israel because there has been crisis after crisis. So I've asked that question to our local MP, and it's always we don't really know. They have, because of all this pressure, they have added resources to the Canadian Visa Office in Tel Aviv to expedite the sponsorship process. We're still not sure, but we expect that they will be here within the year.
So if I could have a motion to accept the report of the Refugee Committee. Was that Esther back there? I can't see who it is. You want to shout out who it was? Lori. Lori again? Okay. Seconded. And so all in favor? And any nays? No nays? We are approved. The next report is the Social Sister, and so the secretary is going to give the report and try to record it at the same time. So this will be interesting. Take it away, Jen.
I almost needed my glasses to get that turned on.
It's working.
Is it? Okay, here we go. All right. So Social Sisters, it was the second year that we got going. I would like to also thank our committee as well, which would be Deborah, Linda, and Morgan, who was part of it for a while. But it's been really a lot of fun to be with everybody. So what's been inspiring? It's been inspiring for Social Sisters to have so much support from people in the congregation with all the donations that we received for all kinds of utensils and supplies and everything like that. My office got inundated quite often with very generous gifts. And I would like to thank everyone, as well, and all the Social Sisters would like to thank everyone who donated all gently used items. People would drop off like brand new items for us to have. And, you know, it's been amazing. So the group is coming together. We haven't been able to make it together as much as we've always, life is busy. But when we do have the groups that meet up, it's inspiring because everybody's getting to know everybody, like the community is there, and it's wonderful to have the children around. We've had people strap a baby on the front of them and then peel potatoes and still laugh and have coffee. Sorry about that. So it's been really inspiring that when people come in, everybody is together and making things, and you're meeting new people. And again, it's that sense of community that we're getting with people, which is, it's really amazing to be able to know some of these other people. And we're also sharing knowledge because we've actually had some lessons in how to make things, from our sushi making to knife skills. And Deborah has been great in sharing some of her culinary expertise, which has been really, really amazing. So I think that covers it. But it's lovely to be able to, again, have another small community within this church, adding to it.
Any questions about Social Sisters? Although Reverend Steve told me he was a little nervous when you were learning knife skills. I don't understand, but anyway. So any questions? If not, if we could have a motion. Thank you. A question, Malcolm.
We actually received some food from the social sisters, so I like that. So thank you very much.
Okay, just for those listening on, feedback, on YouTube and who didn't hear, the Social Sisters made up some food for Malcolm and Mary, and he was thanking them. I'll just turn it over to Janet.
So what happens quite often when we make a batch of food, we usually have some extras left over. And what we try to do is, if we know if there's anybody who has been having a bit of a rough time or they're sick or something like that, we try to make sure that we deliver some of the extra portions to people around the community. So that's something else that we do.
So if I could have a motion to accept it. Sandra, with Linda Fetter seconding, and all in favor? Show of hands. Thank you. Any opposed? None opposed. That motion is now accepted. The next one is the report of the Accessibility Committee. Again, Paul is ill, so he has got a champion in Suzanne Morgan, who's going to come and speak. If I could ask you to be brief, the members of the board who are here will know that I frequently encourage brevity.
That won't be too much of a problem for me today. I have a problem with my jaw, so I'm going to limit. I've actually written it so that I make sure I don't use too many words. I can't also smile too much. I am very happy. My doctor told me to smile with my eyes, so see, I'm very happy. Personally, I'm very proud of our church congregation for how they care about the space we use for worship. And I'm inspired by how our committee pulls together to do the best thing they can each time we hit a challenge or roadblock in the care of renovation to the space. We ran into many challenges. A few of them are listed in the report. I won't go into those in detail right now, but you can ask us. We have lots of fun stories. Late in the project, we did have one that I want to mention, and that was our contractor who had been hired as independent. I do own and operate a construction company, but we hire outside of the church group, not to have a conflict of interest. Very nice gentleman, but he was running into some really serious financial issues and really was challenged to finish the job. And here, this is what leads into my feeling very inspired by our church, and in particular this committee, and how they handled the situation. We've been tapped on the shoulder also for many repair items that were more or less emergencies. You know, those calls evenings and weekends, the kinds of things that happen to your house, don't they always happen when you can't reach anybody who can help? We've had some issues with eavesdropping, water popping into the basement, that sort of thing. Although our team is small, like most of the church committees, our work impacts many people, including the tenants, Janet, church board members, and the church attendees, but also the construction crew and the sub-trades that are hired by the contractor. Many of them may not attend church ever. And our interactions with people has been our witness. It's our chance to demonstrate how Christ would want us to interact with people under very stressful, sometimes, circumstances. I have personally been inspired by the way the three gentlemen on this committee with me, that's Stephen, Paul, and George, use their very rigorous business sense and tough negotiation tactics. You can picture it, right? Okay. They fight for the best outcomes. They somehow deliver their decisions with such gentle and persuasive fashion that no matter how challenging the issue, everyone they make requests of, no matter how challenging, they walk away wanting to do everything they possibly can for Forest Hill United, to make things right, to do things more efficiently, to do them faster where possible. What great stewards of our church and our church resources. Thank you to George, to Stephen, and particularly to Paul. Paul has shouldered most of the difficult challenges we have faced. He's the one who usually is called first. He captures the issues and relays them to the rest of us, always making helpful suggestions and helping us along finding a solution quickly. One really positive outcome from our committee work in 2017 is that we're now so much more ready for phase 3, which is probably going to be the most challenging. Thank you for all of your support in 2017. And lastly, I want to reach out because we're looking to find at least one more committee member. I think Steve agrees. We're finding it really hard to get here quickly when we need to have somebody take a look at something. So you don't need to be experienced in construction if you have a camera or a phone that takes pictures. That's all that's needed. If you have an interest in learning something about construction, this is a great opportunity. It wouldn't be very often. It might be once a month when things are kind of slow. Could be once a week when we get into the deeper things. Be very, very helpful just to have somebody that could make it to the church within, maybe 6 to 12 hours, that kind of thing. Take a picture and send it off to us so we can see what's being talked about. And that's about all. If you're interested in that, please talk to myself, Paul, Stephen, or George. Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. Any questions for Suzanne? No questions, then if we could have a motion to accept the report of the Accessibility Committee. I appreciate it. Wubit made the motion and seconded by Linda Kawasai. And all in favor? Show of hands. Any opposed? None. That has been carried. And now it's the report of the Worship Committee. And as Earl is not here, the report is going to be given by... okay, so we don't have a representative... Or Deborah? Ah, Deborah is here. Okay. And we do have Champion Life coming here next, so we are going to have to be quick.
I'll be very quick. Okay, so what stands out to me the most is the way we start helping out in organizing readers, greeters, ushers, and sometimes, even though a lot of people don't like to do the PowerPoints, and even people walks up to us and say, how can I be a greeter? And that's very heartfelt for me because it makes me feel like they really, really love to be here. And I've asked like people who have just started coming to the church in a short period of time, oh, would you like to go up and read the scripture? And they said, sure, I'd love to. Just email me early so that I can go through it. And it really makes me realize that we have such a unique committee here at the church, and people walk through the door and they feel so welcome. I hug and kiss everybody that walks through the door every Sunday. So that's something that really, really stands out to me, is the way we all come together as a family, and we even meet now in our own home. I invite people over, we share a meal, and these are people who actually not even a member as yet of the church, and it makes them feel welcome. It makes them feel like we are a family, and they just continue to come, and that's something that stands out for me the most. Thank you. Any questions?
Malcolm has a question.
Okay, great. So that was something that the worship committee will maybe talk about on our next meeting. And that I had the same problem also where I wanted to call Ernie, and I reached out to Earl, and Earl said, oh, why don't you call Martha? Which I didn't have Martha's number also. So very interesting, and thank you, Malcolm.
Thank you very much for that. Can I have a motion to accept the report of worship committee, Linda Fetter and Lori? Don't worry, Danny, we'll get you for the next one. You can do the treasurer report. All in favor? Very good. And any opposed? None. So now we have the report of the treasurer, the financial report, which will be followed by the presentation of our budget for this year.
There we go. Can you hear me at the back now? Is that better? All right. Now, when Beth asked each committee chair to identify something inspiring about their work, she was giggling a little, suggesting that I was going to have trouble doing that as treasurer. So I am pleased to prove her wrong. I think as treasurer, every year I have the opportunity to witness the generosity of our members and the shared sense of purpose and commitment to our community of faith. You know, we each contribute financial resources, each according to our ability to give, to support the immediate needs of our community and to invest for a sustainable and productive future. As treasurer, I find that very inspiring, and it inspires me to be the best steward of our funds that I can possibly be, to ensure that we get optimal use of the resources at our disposal, and also in setting givings targets for the congregation that I think are achievable and that also respect the many other demands on your purse. And in case you're interested, that target for this year is going to be a 3% increase over last year. So commit that one to memory. But again, I find it very inspiring to witness that generosity every year. Before I open the floor for questions, I also, and I'm in the right place to do this, I have a confession to make. Nazim Kadri of the Leafs is not the only person to experience a complete brain cramp in April of this year. I also had one, which George Waller was kind enough to point out to me this morning, unfortunately after I'd already printed our financial reports. A bit of background, several of the reports had mentioned this year that we made a major investment in a new heating system for the church this year. And this was long overdue. Our previous furnace boiler was on its last legs, and it was costing us a fortune to maintain every year, as I knew as treasurer. So when the tab came in, an estimate of over $50,000 to replace the furnace with a high-efficiency model, but one which would save us a fortune in terms of ongoing maintenance and repairs going forward. You know, we were really only able to do that this year due in part to the generosity of 2 bequests which we had received from the Merritt and Nobleman estates. They were absolutely critical to us being able to fund it. And we were able to fund some of the rest of the cost from existing resources. But we bridged the gap with a loan from the Toronto Church Council Green Fund, which was available for energy improvements of this kind, for $25,000. And that was able to, with all those other sources of funds, we were able to pay for the entire project. However, in your balance sheet on page 38, I have mistakenly reported that as a loan of $50,000. I wish. No, 25 is the correct amount. So what should be appearing on your balance sheet is the amount which has been, which was outstanding as of December 31st, $23,333, not $48,000. So I will correct that balance sheet and I will post those on the bulletin board for next week and make sure that the correct number is in your bulletin. But I wanted you to be aware that, you know, we actually were able to finance that in part due to these significant bequests from members in addition to the loan funds. And with that, are there any questions or concerns about the financial reports as corrected for that one brain cramp?
I think it was intentional because you wanted to see who was reading your report.
Well, it's very true, Beth, and I discovered that you had not. No. To be fair to Beth, Beth was actually away and normally would have cast an eye over them. Paul Cutler was in the hospital. My excuses are endless. But it now means that George Waller is now my official proofreader and I'm taking him everywhere. If there are no other questions, I'd like first of all to make a motion for the approval of the report, and then I'll go on just to spend a moment on the operating budget for 2018. Could I have, thank you Sandra, a seconder? Thank you Merlin.
Madam Chair, maybe we should say the adoption of the report with that correction.
Yes,
just
exactly.
for the record.
Exactly. You'll notice You'll notice the operating budget for 2018 is in your materials. It has been reviewed by the board. It very closely reflects the actual experience we had in 2017, so it's quite conservative in that respect. We have not anticipated any sources of income that are not already secured. We have also made some pretty, I think, conservative estimates of what our expenses will be over the year. We are anticipating a very similar net profit from operations next year, around the $5,000 level, similar to what we achieved in this year. But I think there are, the one uncertainty for us always is, what will our repair and maintenance bill come in? But I think we are in a much sort of more comfortable position there than we have been at any time in the past 10 years because the new furnace has been installed, and that really, the one expenditure item we think may be related to that is we are likely to have some furnace pipe repairs just as a consequence of having replaced the main system, but we believe we've dealt with most of those in the first quarter of this year, and so we're anticipating a reasonable level over the course of the rest of the year. Any questions or comments before I ask for approval of the 2018 operating budget? Okay. And with that, the only other item in the budget that I would bring your attention to is I had adjusted last year's givings for one of the bequests which was deposited directly to the operating local givings account, and I have projected a 3% increase in local givings from congregational members over the course of this year. And again, I think that's in line with inflation of the expenses we see around us, and it's an achievable target given that this is also the final year of our capital campaign givings, and many of you are also making some very significant contributions in furtherance of your pledges. With that, I'd like to move adoption of the operating budget for 2018.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we are moving on to the nominations, and I have been away for 3 weeks, just got back last week to the ice storm, which was really great. So I don't know what we have for nominations. Perhaps I could ask Steve to deal with this section.
And the job of the nominations committee hasn't finished at this point. So I want to just say a couple of things. First of all, we have received a resignation from the worship committee from Malcolm Finley, who was on the worship committee before I came. He thinks he's been on it for 20 years. We thought it was probably fair to accept it and not try to twist his arm. So I wanted to let you know that. The nominations committee is Sandra Nodagar and Deborah Oliver, and they will be working with you over the next few weeks to find a few people for a few holes, like somebody to work with Suzanne and George and Paul on the accessibility committee and that kind of thing. The openings that we have available to us right now, we need a couple more people to help count offering after church. We need somebody to work on the accessibility committee. It would be great to have somebody to work just on the general property committee. If Malcolm is stepping down from worship committee, it would be great to put somebody new on there. And we are talking about the idea of amalgamating the worship committee and the Christian education committee, which hasn't really met this year. That's why you didn't get a report from them. So some of that work is continuing. Part of the trouble was we had this Easter thing that kind of got in the way and took a lot of my energy, so we never called the meeting that we should have called. And that's why we don't have a slate for you to vote on. However, there is one nomination which we do need to address. Some of you will remember that George Stephen was one of our trustees. We are required by the manual to have a minimum of 3 trustees, a maximum of 15 if anybody's really interested. But trustees need to be voted by a congregational meeting, not simply by the board. And so we have a person who has agreed to stand for trustee. Just so that you're aware, the trustees we have currently are John McCulloch and Beth Harima and Sarah Joyce. So we have our minimum 3, but it doesn't hurt to have a 4th just in case. And Christopher Ono, who is on our board, has agreed to serve as a trustee. and agreed to put his name forward. But if we're going to move with that, then somebody will need to make a motion to have him elected and seconder and go through that process. Other than that, you'll hear more from the nominations committee over the next 4 to 6 weeks, and you may well get a phone call from one of them too. I hope you'll say yes.
Thanks, Steve. And, oh, do we have a question, Sarah? Oh, you were going to make a motion for Christopher Ono to be a trustee. Great motion. Great motion. And do we have a seconder? Oh, Marianne, thank you very much. Christopher couldn't be here today, but he said, don't worry, Marianne will be there, and she'll say that I've actually agreed to this. So Christopher has agreed as well. All in favor? Show of hands. And any opposed? None opposed. So that nomination will be carried. At this point in the meeting, I'll ask, is there any other business that anyone would like to bring other than what's been in the agenda? No? Okay, we're fine there. Now, I see a note of appreciation. Again, this is something I'm not aware of, so I'll turn it over to you, Steve.
I think we've typically used that to thank the staff members, but that has been so eloquently done, we don't need to do that again. However, while we've been sitting here, I have received an email from Lorna Stephen. She's the almost 93-year-old lady I was talking about earlier. She writes to me at 12:47 today, have just been sharing today's service. Thanks to your technical as well as your preaching abilities, I needed to get that part in. I wanted to say again how helpful and supportive it is for seniors like me, unable to get to church, to be able to join you in this way. So Lorna, if you're still listening, I wanted to let you know I got the email, and we're glad you're there too. She says the fact that it was annual meeting day had its own meaning for me, as so often it was George who presided over the necessary business session. I forgot to mention that, but that was very true. She says, when you said I miss him, I found it very touching, as of course I miss him too in so many contexts. He was always willing to take on tasks like chairing that meeting, which in those days no one was keen to do. He cared a lot about Forest Hill United Church, having been an active member since 1950, starting off by teaching a lively Sunday school class of boys. So there you go. We've come full circle, and we can again remember George and celebrate Lorna and do that in the context of such an inspiring meeting.
Thank you, Steve, and that is wonderful to have received the note. And it's now time for my remarks, and often I thank staff, but again, Marianne took care of that so eloquently that I'm not going to attempt to do so, but I would like the staff to know that they are very much appreciated by the board, but also, of course, by everybody in the congregation, because we are a community and we're all part of Forest Hill United, and the staff make this such a meaningful experience for us. But I think it's also incumbent at this time to say thank you to our committees. When I look at the number of committees and the people who serve on those committees, and by that I include the UCW, it's truly amazing. We have so many people working in so many ways, not just for this church, but as seen by the Refugee Committee for a broader community. And it's just wonderful to see that engagement, and that inspires me, and certainly keeps me coming back. And then I do want to give a special thanks to Janet. She and I are in contact quite frequently, and she helps to make sure everything functions smoothly, and as you can see, she's writing a great deal during this to make sure we have followed everything. And then Sarah, small error, like come on. Most of the time you're bang on, so don't know what caused that feedback there. It's probably saying we need a motion to adjourn. And Marianne, followed by Linda very quickly there, and all in favor? And yes, heartfelt. Okay, very good then. So I would say we are now adjourned, and we beat last year by about 10 minutes. Thank you, everyone.